I prefer to talk about the airline commitment to serving customers in the first instance, and I think the airlines have an incredibly strong value proposition. If you think of fares, those have fallen more than fourfold in the last 50 years, and you know, that's something that gets passed on to consumers, and it translates also into increased choice and connectivity, and those are, you know, really powerful value propositions. So I think that's the first point I'd make. The second point I would make is that airlines are really strongly incentivized to get their customers where they want to get to on time. There's two reasons for that. First of all, it makes good business sense. It's a service industry, and getting the passengers to their destinations on time with their bags on the belt on time is going to help customer satisfaction, and this is a very competitive industry. Inevitably, disruption does happen. Things go wrong. It's a complex industry. It's a whole system that goes into putting a passenger journey together. And so obviously the airlines are very strongly incentivized to look after their customers as best they can and to try and get the operation moving again. They have a lot of experience of doing this, and you know, they do their very best. It's a competitive advantage again of the airlines to be known for good customer service. So I think there are broadly three things. The first is to strike a balance between consumers' legitimate interests and the ability of the industry to offer the choice and value that I talked about as the core value proposition. I think that's the first and most important thing. The second is to listen to what consumers really want in terms of consumer protection. There's been quite a lot of research around this. And what comes out very clearly is that the two main priorities for consumers when things go wrong are first to have access to good information, to know what's happening, why it's happening, and what's going to happen from that point forward. And the second thing that they want is to minimize the disruption. In other words, to get to their destination as quickly as possible and with a minimum of disruption and fuss, so they can do that activity, which is the reason they're traveling in the first place. The third thing I'd talk about would be around a closer link between accountability and control. And what I mean by that is that aviation, as I talked about, it's a really complex system, everything that goes into putting a passenger journey together. And airlines only have influence over a small part of that. Lots of other players that are involved. And so it makes sense from a government perspective to link accountability and control. Hold airlines accountable for the elements that they can influence, but also to ensure that there is appropriate accountability for other players in the value chain. I think there are three things that I would highlight here. The first is our global reach and our global footprint mean that we've got experience of many regimes around the world. So what we can do is we can help governments who are considering what they can do to protect consumer interests by sharing experience from other parts of the world, lessons that have been learned, best practices, and also mistakes that they could potentially avoid and not fall into. The second thing we can do, obviously, draw on our extensive data base and our airline analysis capabilities to explain to governments the impact that different interventions would have on the airline business. And obviously that links to the third point, which is around ensuring that any policy interventions actually achieve their ultimate goal, which is about protecting consumers. We certainly want to avoid any unintended consequences that would be, for example, where a regulatory intervention impacted on choice or impacted on value by increasing the fares that customers can face. So our role is really to explain and to educate governments around those areas.